Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Caitlin Elliott, and if you're new to my channel, you've never even heard what I do. I cover true crime cases on Tuesdays and Fridays, and for the month of February, I've been covering as many African American cases as I could, because it is in fact Black History Month. I understand as I'm recording this, it's technically March 1st, but I still wanted to add an extra week to Black History Month cases I'm covering, if that makes sense. So, and I'm going to try to introduce myself a little bit because a lot of people probably never fully met or understood who I am. So I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Caitlin Elliott. I'm 24 years old, and I recently started my YouTube channel because there was a YouTuber that I follow, and I kept requesting for this specific case to be covered, and nobody would ever cover the case. So it got very frustrating to me, and so I decided, you know what, why don't I create a voice for those who can't talk, and I go out and make these videos to bring more attention to these cases about missing people. And so that's exactly what I did. So, as many of you know, like I said, February 1st through March 1st is Black History Month. Technically, today is March 1st as I'm recording this video, and I have another video that I'm posting on Friday that's considered Black History Month. So this is going to be the last week of Black History Month. And for today's case, I wanted to talk about a case that's actually 20 years old as of this year. And this is the bizarre and unsolved disappearance of Alexis Patterson. So Alexis Patterson, she was a 7-year-old girl that went missing from her school, on her way to school back in 2002. And Alexis, she was actually born on April 4th of 1995. So she was 7 years old when she went missing on the 4th. Like I said, she was a 7-year-old little girl, and she was on her way to school when she mysteriously disappeared. So it's very bizarre to me. So she was born on April 4th of 1995 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee is said to be the most populated city in the entire state of Wisconsin, with a population of 577,000 just in the year of 2020. So now, back when Alexis went missing, it was a slight bit larger at 590,000 people. So it was a very big city, and I can't fathom how big of a city that is, because where I'm from, it was about maybe 40,000 people. And where I live now, it's about maybe 30,000. So when I read that it was that much, it just blew my mind. I can't even imagine how many people that would be. But so Alexis's parents, they are Ayanna Patterson and Kenya Campbell. But at one point, her parents got a divorce, and Ayanna, she went and she remarried a different man named Laurent Bourgeois. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Bourgeois, and he ended up living with them. I apologize to my dog. He saw another dog and now he's going crazy. So Alexis is said to have been a very kind girl with a very bubbly and outgoing personality, but she was also extremely feisty. She was one of those people you did not want to mess with because she would tell you how it was. And she had her favorite color. Her favorite color was pink. Pink was her personality as well. And her family had many, many nicknames for her, but the most common nicknames that they used for her was Lexi and Pie. I don't know where they got Pie from, but that's so cute. Maybe Cutie Pie. I love that. It's so cute. And her family thought it was because she was, as sweet as pie, which I can understand. I work with kids. They're all super sweet. And Alexis, she had lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with her mother Ayanna and her stepfather Laurent Bourgeois something. And their home was only a half block from Alexis's school. And this school was called the High Mount Boulevard Elementary School. And she was in the first grade there. And it was said that Alexis loved school. And she was known to have perfect attendance at her school, which is incredible, especially in the first grade. And on May 2nd of 2002, which was the day before Alexis had gone missing, it was said that Alexis and her mother got into an argument. It was said that this was over homework, and Ayanna was not one to tolerate any type of disrespect. So when Alexis started sassing her, they just started bickering with each other, and they told her that this behavior was not going to be tolerated. And Alexis had made cupcakes the day prior because she wanted to bring it into her class. And her mother had told her that she wasn't allowed to bring the cupcakes into her class because of her behavior. Now, this really upset Alexis. And she had really been looking forward to bringing them to her class. She had promised everybody. So on May 3rd of 2002, Alexis got ready for school. And when she was ready, her stepfather, Laurent, takes her to school. And she's able to walk because of how close they were. So Laurent would walk her to school. And he said to the police that he watched her go across the crosswalk to go to the school, and she made her way to the elementary school playground. And however, despite Laurent saying that Alexis went across the street and he watched her get dropped off and he dropped her off, he watched her go into the playground at the school, she was marked absent for that day. And like I said, she had perfect attendance. So this really drew some concern for the school. And like I said, she was marked absent. And there was no sign of her in her classes at school that day. And when school let out, friends and teachers, they looked for her. And there was no sign that she was even inside of the school to begin with. Despite her not being inside the school, however, several classmates of hers mentioned to police that they had witnessed her outside on the playground crying. And it stated that this occurred before school started and after school had let out. So I don't understand, if she was dropped off at school, she was marked absent, but yet she was still there. It confuses me. So none of her friends saw her in class that day, but they saw her outside on the playground. Now, I don't have any children, but I do work at a daycare. At my job, we provide for the children. And if there is a child that is absent or not, at the daycare and nobody calls, because the daycare I work at is on an army base. So it's very important for the soldiers and the families of the soldiers to call and let us know, because we are responsible for those children. So, it's just a protocol that we had to do is we had to call the parents and check and see if everyone was okay. We even had to call and let the parents know to come pick up the child if they're coughing, sneezing, have diarrhea, because I work with infants sometimes. And it was said that, actually, I don't even want to talk about that quite yet, but the administrators, it's part of a teacher's duty. I'm trying to word this best I can. It's part of a teacher's duty that if there is a student that is absent and it was not, no parents called in and said, my daughter Alexis is sick and she won't be in school today, or there was a note given to the school the day prior to her not showing up, the school would be aware and wouldn't have to call, but we would have to call home and double check to see if the child was okay. And the school that Alexis went to never called and double checked to see notified the family that Alexis was absent until after the school day had ended. You're supposed to call when they're marked absent in the mornings and it's an unexplained absence, and it blew my mind because they waited so long to say, oh, by the way, your child, Alexis, never showed up to school today. It just doesn't make sense, because I had no idea why it took them that long, but if I were Alexis' parents, I would have been furious. That just does not make any sense to me. So it was in the afternoon of that day when Ayana had found out her daughter, Alexis, was missing. She found out in the afternoon when her daughter didn't even show up in the morning, which, again, just blows my mind, because that's several hours of her not being accounted for, and she could be Lord knows where. So whenever she found out her daughter was missing, immediately, as any of us would, she called the police. And this part is so frustrating to me, because the police did not even show up to her house until a whole hour after she had called and reported her daughter missing. And police, when it comes to children, or anyone who's missing, are supposed to be on it like that. And they just weren't. And it's just like, what were they doing for a whole hour when they're supposed to be taking care of this case? Like, trying to figure out what happened to this 7-year-old little girl who went missing. Like, I just don't understand it. If you have any ideas, please let me know down below in the comments section, because I don't know. So the police, they decide right away off the bat that something must have happened to Alexis on the playground. And she had been crying on the playground. So, like, between that time of her crying on the playground, something must have happened. Someone must have taken her. And do you guys remember that case that covered about that 3-year-old little girl named Rachel Runyon who went missing from a playground? And it's possible that this could have happened as well. Alexis could have been taken from the school playground. And additionally, Ayana had raised Alexis to be aware and cautious of stranger danger, so she wouldn't have just wandered off and gone home with just anybody. So police and her parents really think that she might have been just really upset about the whole cupcake situation, and she might have just been too embarrassed and upset to go into school that day. And so the police start searching for her right away, and at this time she's only considered to be a runaway because they thought that she was upset about the cupcakes. And they start looking in the north central Milwaukee area and the High Boulevard School area, which is the elementary school that Alexis went missing from. And the Milwaukee police, they did anything and everything possible that they could do to help search for her. They used boats to look through waters to see if maybe she could have, like, wandered off and drowned. They used helicopters to search above to see if they could find her, like, maybe in the mountains or anywhere. I've never been to Wisconsin. I have no idea what the land is like. But they tried to get an aerial view of the playground where she was last seen at. So they were just searching everywhere, but nobody could find Alexis. And there was no trace of her. So the police, they start asking the classmates, hey, have you guys seen Alexis? What was Alexis doing today? What did you guys see here? Was anything off? And the classmates, they claim to have seen a pretty weird and sketchy looking vehicle that was parked in the school parking lot that didn't look like it belonged to any teachers or anything, and it was there for a majority of the day. And what was even more bizarre is that the car never picked up a child or dropped off a child. It was just sitting there, like, watching the children, which is weird. And the thing that made me confused is if this truck was just sitting around there watching people, why didn't anybody call 911? Like, hey, there's this creepy truck sitting out here. Why didn't adults just say anything about it? And I don't know. I just find the whole thing just so weird. Like, how does a child just go disappearing, like, into thin air from an elementary school? It just doesn't make any sense. So it's said that after Alexis had vanished, that vehicle vanished as well. But unfortunately, nobody has been able to fully connect the vehicle to Alexis's disappearance, which is incredibly frustrating to Ayana. So as it turns out, just 2 weeks before Alexis had gone missing, the school, they had sent out a very alarming letter to all the parents, and in this letter, it was claimed that there was an unknown man who was nearby the school, and he wasn't that far, and he tried to abduct a little boy nearby Alexis's school. Now, it's unknown whether or not the boy was a student at the school or if he was just a boy that lived in the neighborhood, but it was said that this man had tried to abduct this little boy. And the teacher had stated that they once saw Alexis talking to an unknown woman who wasn't like wasn't her mom or anything. So this kind of alarmed the teacher, and it's still unknown who this woman was. So Ayana, she actually asked Alexis about this woman, and Alexis, she claimed that she had no idea what her mother was talking about, which is so weird because Alexis' teacher actually noticed all of this. So you would think that she would know what she's talking about unless she's trying to cover something up. So Alexis, her father didn't know anything about Alexis going missing. And this was because nobody had told him. And he was in prison at the time, and on May 6th, 2002, which is 3 days after Alexis had disappeared, her father was actually released from prison, and he was questioned about Alexis' disappearance and his involvement. And he said, I couldn't have been involved because he was proved innocent when he said that he had never even knew that she went missing until he saw it on the news, on the television at the prison. Like, what a way to find out. So the police, they began questioning everything they could, like everyone they could, including Alexis's father. And so it turns out that they started interviewing LaRon extensively because he was just giving off some bad vibes. And he actually had a very disturbing criminal track record. And this actually caught my eye because if someone had a really bad criminal track record, why would you have them around your child? Like, if you know that they have like a really bad rep. I personally would put my child's safety over my happiness. That's just me. But so, especially if the child was there first, because LaRon is her stepfather, which means that he came after Alexis was born. And this just completely, frustrated me because I was like, why would you ever put a man before your child? I just don't know. So it turns out that LaRon, he was charged with shooting and killing a police officer, and he was with an unnamed woman when they shot the police officer, but they were both found innocent, which makes absolutely zero sense to me. So people, they just start blaming and accusing Ayana of being behind this whole disappearance of Alexis. And this really set her off because she just started placing blame on the Milwaukee school district for failing to keep the school safe. And I personally don't blame her because if my child was seen at the school is 100% solely responsible for my child. And if my child goes missing from said school, it would be the school's fault because, like I said, they are responsible for the children. That'd be like if, me as a teacher in preschool, if, God forbid, one of my children went missing, I would be held responsible for that. And it would not be Alexis's mother's fault. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, like I said, I personally would be highly upset if my child went missing from school during recess. I don't know. Another important detail is that the school was extremely criticized because they did not inform Alexis's family that she was missing from the school until after the school day had ended, which is absolutely just ridiculous. They failed her, essentially. They failed to keep her safe. And the family was also extremely upset because the school, they had never came to check up on the family, like, hey, you guys doing okay? Did you find any more information about Alexis? They never did any of that. And this upset the family because they really wanted them to check up and see if everything was okay, especially because this was a school where their child had gone missing from. They should feel responsible for what had happened. And it just wasn't done. So when the school was questioned about this, they claimed that they had followed the correct protocol and procedures when it came to her disappearance. So in May 14th of 2002, the police, they said Alexis had actually fully disappeared under suspicious circumstances. And it's not made public to what exactly the suspicious circumstance was, but somehow this 7-year-old little girl just magically disappeared into thin air. Like, she was just sucked up and just vanished. And so once the police announced that it became a disappearance under suspicious circumstances, it automatically became a criminal investigation. And this was hugely important because this meant that Alexis' case could possibly be a child abduction. And police, they right away started claiming that they believed that Alexis' case was involved with foul play. And for those who don't actually know what foul play means, foul play is defined as a criminal act that results in serious damage, injury, or possible murder. So they're thinking that one of those things happened to Alexis. So, however, after saying all that, they still will not release to the family nor to the public why they truly believe that Alexis' case was involved with foul play, which was so frustrating to the family. They just wanted to know where their daughter was and what had happened. So, I'm sorry, I got I don't know what the heck that was. So in August of 2002, an unknown caller, this was 3 or 4 months after Alexis went missing. So an unknown caller called a local radio station and had said some very chilling comments about Alexis Patterson's disappearance. And the caller had apparently claimed that Alexis had been murdered and her body was dumped into a nearby river. So the police, they took this tip because they're like, well, it's possible that this could have happened, you know? And they decided to drive over to the river, and they dove into the water to search for Alexis's body, like the person had been claiming to see. So they searched for just hours and hours and days before they stopped because they just couldn't find anything that would relate back to the case of Alexis. So police, they even decided to bring canine dogs, and they started searching the surrounding wooded area to see if maybe she was on a path somewhere. You know, maybe she wandered off over here, maybe she was abducted and put over here. So they were searching for this body, but they still could find absolutely nothing. And Alexis' family, they started printing out flyers about their daughter's disappearance and handing them out to people who passed by. And they just started nailing up posters, and this was when a very hateful and racist man, it's always the white people, man. It's always the white people. This very racist white man, his name was Brian Warner. He showed up and noticed the flyer, and he had hung up his own flyer that he took time out of his day to put. And this was quoted saying, "Why would any white person care about a black girl that's gone missing?" And he actually made that into a poster and hung it up. Like, I'm laughing because it's ridiculously offensive, stupid, and confusing as to why the hell this guy would take time out of his day to do something like this. But, like, why? What the hell is wrong with people? Like, seriously. So Brian, his dumbass, he ends up getting arrested for posting the racial flyers, and he was actually released under the freedom of free speech laws. Because of course, right? It's always that. So eventually a year goes by, and in the year 2003, the Milwaukee Police Department, they go and they ask LaRon, remember the stepfather? to come into the station for some questioning. Sorry, I was like, so he agrees, and they have him come in and take a polygraph test, which if you don't know what a polygraph test is, it's basically a bunch of questions that the police will ask you, or any type of forensic investigator, to see if you are telling the truth about a crime or if you are lying. And LaRon, he is asked these questions about Alexis' disappearance, and he reportedly just bombs it, like fails it ridiculously. And the tests were about Alexis, which is so bizarre because she was at the school. So to this day, nobody knows like what questions about Alexis were asked in the polygraph test that made LaRon fail, but he failed. And then as it turns out, LaRon, he ends up getting charged later with an unrelated crime not long after Alexis went missing. And this was said after he was known to have a domestic violence dispute with Ayanna, Alexis's mother. And apparently she had been trying to leave him because she knew how abusive LaRon truly was. And it was reported by police that LaRon was actually ordered by the court to stay away from Ayanna. And it's quite possible that Ayanna was telling the truth about and was not involved whatsoever in Alexis' disappearance. I'm thinking that it might have been LaRon. I don't know. So 11 years go by. And I'm like 11 years go by, like ridiculous amount of time. Go from 2002 when Alexis had disappeared, and there was no information and no leads as to what happened to Alexis. 11 freaking years. Like, are you serious? So in the year of 2013, which is 11 years later, it was announced that Alexis would be 18 years old at the time, and since she was born in 1995, and she was still missing with absolutely no evidence to where Alexis could possibly have gone. So 3 years later, after they announced, oh, she's 18 now, in 2016, there was some pretty interesting and terrifying information that became released to the public. So there was this man, his name was Joshua Miller, and he informed investigators about a very important tip, and he felt like this was important enough to be told to the investigators so this could relate back to the investigation and the case. So he was living in a town called Bryan, Ohio, and it isn't too far from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was about maybe like 5 hours away, so you could easily drive there. And this man, his name was Joshua Miller. He truly 100% believed that his ex-wife may have possibly have actually been Alexis herself. So Joshua and his ex-wife, whose name I will bring up later, she and him got married in the year of 2009, which at this time, if it is Alexis, she would have been 14 years old at the time. And Joshua stated that they divorced nearly 3 years later. So he stated that his ex-wife's past was very, very confusing, and there were some things that didn't make much sense to both him and the ex-wife. So it is said this woman had literally no memory of her life prior to 10 years old. Remember, Alexis was kidnapped at the age of 7, so this was extremely bizarre and odd to everybody. So Joshua, he tried doing what he could to help bring up his ex-wife's past. He started doing what he could to help her. And this is when he actually stumbled upon the case of Alexis. And it's said that both Alexis and his ex-wife had a very similar birthmark and 2 of the same scars in the exact same places as Alexis Patterson had, which is kind of weird. Because I will tell you right now, I have a birthmark on the back of my neck, and the only people that have the birthmark on the back of their necks in my family are my 2 sisters. So it's kind of odd, And Alexis, she would have been 14, like I said, when she and Josh got married. And it's very possible that Alexis, if this was Alexis, like, she could have lied about her age and just claimed that she was 18 when she was really 14. So Josh started comparing these pictures of Alexis and his ex-wife and thought that they were just extremely and scarily similar to each other. And he decided to show his ex-wife pictures of Alexis, and even she was in shock and disbelief because she's like, that looks exactly like me. So Josh, he decided to travel with their son that he had with his ex-wife, and he wanted to meet with Ayanna. And so this was because he truly believed that Ayanna was his son's grandmother. So he started talking about how the child needed to take a DNA test, and he wanted to have this done to see if truly that this child was in fact the son of Alexis, and Alexis was his ex-wife. And the ex-wife's name that she was raised as was a woman named Lisa Miller. Well, she had a maiden name, but her name was Lisa Miller when they got married. And the police, they heard about this lead, and they started tracking her down. They wanted to make sure that this woman truly was Alexis. And Joshua and his ex, they actually have a couple children together. And like everyone said before, that would have meant that she was still a child when they got married. That's so gross. So DNA samples came back actually relatively quickly, a little too quickly if you ask me. And it turns out that the DNA samples did not match the samples from Alexis Patterson. And Ayanna, when she found this out, she was honestly like very confused and shocked, because then she began to question the legitness about the DNA test that was done on the woman and Alexis, because she even stated that the DNA that they had used was way too old. It was from 2002, and they could have been too old, and it could have been contaminated too much. And because of this, Ayanna, she began to suspect that the police may have used false DNA to claim that this person was not Alexis, and that could very well be a possibility. You know, it's a possibility. And Ayanna, she just wanted to try and have the police test her DNA against this unknown woman to see if it was Alexis, and this request was very oddly and very quickly denied. And this confused the hell out of me, because I was like, if this was truly Alexis and you guys are talking about wanting to close her case, why in the world would you not let her test her DNA against this other woman? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. Wouldn't they want to solve the case? Wouldn't they want to know what happened to Alexis like they keep saying they want to? So despite all this, Ayanna, she truly believed that this woman was honestly her daughter. And they had the same identical mole in the same area above the left eye, which is something that ran in the family. And Joshua had noticed all of this as well. And the woman and Ayanna even had the same similar bump on their pinky, and an identical scar under their right eye. This is my right eye. And this was something that Alexis had as well. So Ayanna was said to have not even known about the results from the DNA test until it's plastered all over the news, because, like, again, her father didn't even know about Alexis going missing until it's plastered all over the news. So Wisconsin police is like, what are you doing? Like, seriously. So she honestly doesn't believe how the conclusion that they came up with, because how could they have had results when the police only just did the DNA test to the DNA that she gave them less than 24 hours ago? How the hell does that make any sense? So the police, they told Ayanna that the DNA that they tested were given from, it was picked up off of Alexis' items that were given to them by Ayanna herself. But Ayanna had never given them any type of evidence or items to be tested for DNA. So she was very confused as to why the police even came up with this theory. She was like, what? So the Wisconsin state senator, he eventually heard about all this DNA business and how the woman supposedly was not Alexis, and she had been trying her hardest for all these years to help search for Alexis. And even the state senator, she was just absolutely convinced that Joshua's ex was actually Alexis herself. So in May 2017, there was a Hear Your Voice celebration that took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this was where Alexis had vanished from. So the Wisconsin State Police Department, they had offered a $10,000 reward that could lead to any information that could help find Alexis Patterson. And as it turns out, and I'm laughing because it's absolutely just ridiculous that they did this poor family like this, and it's ridiculous that they just screwed everything up like this. But the reward money that they had, the $10,000 reward money they had for any information, was used drug money. Which, if you don't understand what that means, people who used to, use cocaine would roll up cocaine in dollar bills and snort it. And the police confiscated those money, the money that they used, and was trying to give it out as a reward. Like, I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable and it's ridiculous. Like, what the hell? So, Ayanna, she truly believes that the police department did a horrible job with taking care of Alexis' case, and they completely failed her, Alexis, and her family. And I personally don't blame her one bit. I would have sued the shit out of that police department, honestly. And as it still stands in 2022, Ayanna, she still holds out for this case being solved, because 20 years later, it's still not solved, and there's been absolutely no leads or anything. And Ayanna, it said that she still celebrates Alexis's birthdays and holidays as if she was still there, which is absolutely heartbreaking. And it is said because of Alexis going missing, Ayanna has become extremely protective of her remaining children. She doesn't want to see anything happen to them like what happened to Alexis, and she is constantly on guard with them. So Alexis's case is actually listed as a endangered missing child under suspicious circumstances. So now I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about some theories. And as you always know, I like to bring up some theories and my opinions as well, but the opinions are going to be later. I'm going to be talking about some theories about this case. So most of the theories I'm going to be talking about are known to the public, the police, and even Ayanna know about these theories. So the first one I want to talk about is the theory that the stepfather, LaRon, was involved with Alexis's disappearance. And it's a possibility that he stated that he took her to school, but actually didn't. However, that wouldn't explain why the children claimed to have seen her crying on the playground. But also the police, they don't have enough concrete evidence against LaRon to actually persecute him for the crime. And the county sheriff, however, he believes that Alexis had never been dropped off at school, and the children made up these stories to seem helpful to the police. And I don't know. Honestly, I'm not too sure about any of that. I mean, the kids are known to lie, but would they lie about that? I have no idea. So the second theory I want to talk about is that Alexis may have possibly been a sex trafficking victim. And weirdly enough, people have actually heard rumors that LaRon had worked around prostitutes. And this was after he had repeatedly kept denying that he had never been involved in Alexis' disappearance. He would never do something like that to his daughter. He had never worked around prostitutes. So the police, they hear about this, and once again, they have LaRon take a polygraph test, and once again, he fails miserably. So there's actually a very odd conspiracy theory about Bryan, Ohio. Remember the place where Joshua's from? Joshua and his ex-wife? And it's said that nearly everybody who lives there is claimed to be a missing person who didn't know their identities. And it's been stated that possibly Ayanna knows that Joshua's ex-wife is in fact Alexis, but she had either been threatened or paid off to keep her mouth shut about it. So that's another theory. And I don't know, I just want to know what you guys think about those theories, because my mind has been blown. So LaRon, he actually ended up dying of a possible drug overdose in January of 2021, so just last year, next to an unknown woman. And what I find to be so suspicious about all of this is that his body was found next to an unknown woman. Her name hasn't been released to the public yet, and it's just so bizarre to me that the only real suspect and the only real person of interest in this case is dead. And get this, like, LaRon actually died of a possible drug overdose, which means it's pretty compelling to the story about Alexis possibly being sold into sex and drug trafficking. Like, maybe they traded Alexis to get drugs. And this, of course, all of this is said to be rumored, but it is also rumored and possibly connected to the theory that the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America is actually made up of missing children. That's an odd theory to think about, and that they've taken these kidnapped children and tried to give them to other families. I don't know, that's just a theory. So, as always, I like to give my own personal thoughts and opinions at the end of my videos, and I personally think that LaRon definitely had something to do with this, with Alexis' disappearance. I mean, come on now. He failed the polygraph test how many times? How many times? He was the last person to see her. He was the one that claimed to drop her off at school. And what's even more confusing to me is that he never took her to school. How did all these people claim to have seen her crying, unless it was made up just to seem helpful? You know, I don't know. I still think LaRon's involved somehow. And I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments section. Please let me know what you guys think on these theories and these opinions and these thoughts. I would love to know. And just let me know what you think, like who you think I should cover in my next video. So, as you know, this is my last week of doing Black History Month cases. Please let me know how you think I've done so far, and thank you all for listening to my videos. And as always, I'll see you in my next videos. Goodbye.